Hello, my dear listeners. My name is Kishore Ganesh, and in episode 12 of the Vocal About Visuals podcast, I will be talking about the biggest Tamil release in a while, which also happens to be a direct OTT release, Jagame Thandiram, which is out on Netflix right now. The movie stars Dhanush, who, dare I say, is becoming more quote unquote international by the second. He's doing Grey Man with the Russo brothers, who, if you don't know them, are the makers of the small indie movie called Avengers Endgame, which grossed this tiny whimsical figure of $2.75 billion worldwide. Peanuts, really. And it's the same Russo brothers who are promoting Jagame Thandiram on Twitter a day before its release. This interesting bit of trivia aside, this is hardly Dhanush's first brush with Hollywood or international markets. His song Kolaveri D became a global phenomenon to the point that it got mentioned on CNN in the US as the most viral video of that week or something. He has also done a straight international film called The Extraordinary Journey of the Fakir in 2018. So in a way, he was poised to be the star to feature in a straight up quote unquote crossover film. And speaking of crossover films, I think Jagame Thandiram is a crossover film, or at least it comes very close to that. It is a Tamil production but with a very global setting that tackles a couple of interrelated global issues: the refugee crisis / racism / xenophobia, and has a proper British actor of considerable pedigree in the form of James Cosmo, who plays the antagonist. Now, the reason why I say it comes very close to that but not 100% is surprisingly not because of the international portion of this film, but instead because of the Indian or Tamil portion of the film. The Tamil portion of the film feels like it is just an elongated introduction sequence for Dhanush's character, which I believe could have been written and edited better or differently. Sure, the story threads and character motivations that are established in this portion do have resonance throughout the movie, which is why it makes it slightly frustrating that had this portion been done better, it would have elevated the film further. If I were to put it in another way, the Tamil portion seemed surprisingly soulless as opposed to the international portion, which makes me think that Karthik Subbaraj would have been better off making an entirely international film in Tamil, which is what the London portion of the film essentially is. And had Karthik Subbaraj done this international film, I wouldn't be surprised if he did end up with a proper crossover film. I'm sure that the movie would have worked big time for the Indian audience and maybe would have been even more palatable to the international audience. I say even more because I'm not aware of the international response to this film yet. It is available in 17 languages and in 190 countries thanks to Netflix. So let's see if there are any reports in the coming days which will illustrate the response from the global audience. In terms of the performances, the elephant in the room that has to be addressed is the performances of the international actors. Because I have rarely seen, if ever, any international actor perform well in Indian movies. They come across as caricatures or perform as though they are in a grade school play, and I don't think for a minute that it is down to their talent or ability. I think this is more to do with the hesitancy or the, pardon my French here, but laissez-faire attitude of the performers and the directors, rather than any real lacking in the ability or talent department. And I think in this film, James Cosmo is being dramatic, a bit over the top at times, but I think for a large portion of the film, he does his job well. In a kind of a bilingual with Cosmo speaking in English around all the Tamil dialogues, the movie and him do manage to deliver an evil, menacing antagonist for the audience to experience, to a large extent. One more observation, and not a complaint, about his performance is the lack of subtlety. But then again, subtlety is not what this movie is going for, and this is pretty evident from the writing. One look at the number plate of James Cosmo's car or the decor of his room, which you get to see in the climax, will tell you what I'm talking about. On the whole, I would say that Cosmo's performance is effective but uneven and stops just short of being the first time an international actor in a Tamil film doesn't come across as awkward or unnatural. But he is very close, So kudos to him and Karthik Subbaraj for that. This, I believe, is a great first step. The performances of other non-Indian actors are more of what we have seen. It is not bad such that it spoils the movie, but there is that feeling you get when you watch the performances which makes you think that perhaps they are a bit too stiff or restricted. Coming to the Indian actor performances, Dhanush is a great performer. There is no doubt about it. You don't get 2 national awards at such a young age or get called up to be part of Hollywood films without being good. But in this movie, I felt a lack of connect as I watched his performance. And I believe that this is not down to his performance but more to the writing. Maybe it was the character itself which came across as a bit larger than life and psychotic, which meant that the audience couldn't relate to it too much. Or maybe it was down to how those qualities were brought to life on screen. Or maybe it was the editing. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that maybe it was issues with the execution that caused this lack of connect. Now, to the characters that worked for me, I would say that the character of Sivadas, played by Joju George, and Attila, played by Aishwarya Lakshmi, are the emotional core of this film. Their performances perfectly complement the writing, and I thoroughly enjoyed all the scenes that they were a part of. Thinking about it, I would say Dhanush and Cosmo's world is eclectic and chaotic, and George and Aishwarya's world is centered and stable and emotionally fulfilling, despite the situation of their characters in the film. And Jagame Thandiram is essentially these two opposing worlds clashing, mingling, and finally coexisting with each other. Special mention to Vadivu Karasi, who has just 5 to 7 minutes of screen time but steals almost all the scenes that she is in. As far as the technical side of things are concerned, the jewel of this film is by far the cinematography. Every location and every sequence is brilliantly shot, brilliantly lit, and brilliantly stylized. There is a sense of smoothness and flow to the cinematography, which is often not present in the editing and writing of the film. A prime example of this stylized cinematography is the scene containing that shot from the trailer where Dhanush, smoking a beedi, is pointing a gun at a person, and he in turn has a whole bunch of guns pointed at him. There are several shots in this film which are straight up wallpaper material, and kudos to the cinematographer and director for that. Without boring anyone with details, I can say that this film is extremely strong technically, and honestly no one would have doubted that in a Karthik Subbaraj film. Focusing on the politics of the film for just a few seconds, once you have watched the film, you might have questions about what can the common man do in this global political game that is being played out between people, governments and nations. And I'm going to state the only things that we as citizens can do, and they are as follows. Number 1, we have to vote regularly and consistently, and most importantly, we have to vote with our conscience. And number 2, we have to treasure, protect and celebrate our constitution and this great human achievement called a democracy. If enough of us do these things, rest assured that even if we can't prevent something bad from happening to some other nation and its people, we can prevent it from happening to us. Well, that's enough of civics. Let's get back to the movie in the next segment. On the whole, Jagame Thandiram is a movie that is technically brilliant, has an expansive setting and story, and is extremely stylized. The issue with this film is primarily that there seem to be 2 stories with 2 distinct personalities and souls existing in one body, aka the film. And this combination makes for a jarring experience. While I thoroughly enjoyed the London portion of the movie, the Tamil Nadu portion of the movie seemed to me like it was present mainly to serve as marketing material. I'm not saying that this portion should not exist, I'm just saying it should have been given a different treatment. The other thought that came to me is that considering it has become a direct OTT release, and one of the major issues of this film was the jerky editing, what if Karthik Subbaraj went ahead and added the edited scenes which will increase the runtime? But who cares about that, considering it is on Netflix? Now, I know from interviews that the movie has been completely re-edited to suit the OTT format, but the runtime still comes up to 2 hours and 38 minutes. So I don't know if this is the Karthik Subbaraj cut, for the lack of a better word, or if the edit time was kept closer to what the audience might experience in a theatre. All this said and done, this movie is still better than 95% of all Indian movies we have seen in a while. This is in terms of the story, the craft, the acting, and the ambition. So, despite its flaws, Jagame Tandiram is a movie that you will enjoy provided you go in with an open mind and buckle up for the ride that Karthik Subbaraj wants to take you on. It may not be the smoothest of rides, but it sure will be memorable as hell. And I believe this film belongs to that minority class of Indian films that is rewatchable, not for the feelings that it made you feel, but purely from a content point of view. Once again, my name is Kishore Ganesh. This is the Vocal About Visuals podcast, and thank you, my dear listeners, for your time and for listening.